welcome everyone. For those of you who don't know me yet, I'm Kathy Pelletier and I'm the director of the Teaching and Learning Program here at EDUCAUSE, and we're collaboratively supporting the UIA chatbot technology scaling project along with Rios Partners and Tiffany Polite from UIA. And we have here today a special guest, Elliot Felix, and I'll introduce him in just a second, but wanted to connect the dots. This is our first webinar experience that we are sharing with all of you as a part of this broader set of work together. And one of the reasons that we decided to invite Elliot here and really talk about service design is that in our initial conversations, especially in the last couple workshops that we had together, a lot of folks were really recognizing the need to take a step back and really understand the student population, really understand the goals of the chatbot project at a deeper level and how they intersected with other parts of the organization and other departments. And so we're hoping that this content today will also set you up for the first workshop that we'll have later in this week that Jess will be leading. So with that, I introduce Elliot Felix, who's the founder and principal at Bright Spot Strategy, and I'll just turn it over to you, Elliot, and take it away.
That sounds great, and it's great to be here. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, great. And if you're able, it would certainly be great to see cameras on and faces, but if you're not comfortable with that, or you've got other things going on, I totally get that too. But it's, as a presenter, it's great to not be talking to as full room as possible. And really excited about today's session. Start with a little bit of an intro and warm up, and then we're going to go through these sections. So the first on understanding student experience, the second on the basics of student service design or student service design. As Kathy was mentioning, we'll pause for questions, and then we'll dig into a few case studies, and then have some more time for questions. And I think I got a pretty good briefing from Kathy and Nicole and Jess about what you all are up to. But if you ever need to dig deeper or you have a question, feel free to fire it away in the chat or raise your hand, and I'm happy to stop and pivot or I guess you can't really say pivot anymore. But I'm happy to do my best to help. So with that, let's dig in. One other bit of orientation, we're going to do some polls throughout the session. We're going to use Poll Everywhere. So the easiest thing to do is to go to pollev.com/brightspot on your phone or on another window. That makes it really easy to pick things. And it's much more fun than Zoom polls because you get to see things in real time and it's magically moving across the screen and all that good stuff. So pollev.com/brightspot, and either on your phone or in another window. So we get to practice that and start off with a little bit of trivia here. The top college and university mascots in the U.S. Pick three. You've got Bears, Bulldogs, Eagles, Hawks, Knights, Lions, Panthers, Tigers to choose from. We've got Tigers off to an early lead. Looks like a significant lead, but other things catching up. And Bears, Bulldogs. Okay. I'll give you another second or two. So it's settling into Tigers first, Bears second, Bulldogs third. Now, if you're curious about the actual data, here's what it is. I think there's a bit of patriotism happening maybe with the Eagles. So lots and lots of Eagles, but Tigers and Bulldogs are second and third. So you all did a pretty great job of nailing number 2 and number 3. and now you know how the poll everywhere is going to work. You probably all used it in the past, but in case you hadn't, that's what we're going to be doing a couple of times. So a little bit of introduction, a little bit about me. I was originally trained as an architect, and I've learned some new tricks along the way about strategy and facilitation and sense making. And in the process, I've been lucky enough to work with about 100 colleges and universities and impact about 1 million students in terms of setting foot in spaces or using services or consulting with staff. And I'm in it to help people. So excited about today, and like to play in intersections. I feel like that's where the kind of interesting problems are, and started a company to really play in the intersection of people and programs in place, because I don't think you can change one without the other. That company is called Brightspot. We're a higher ed strategy firm on a mission to create more engaging and equitable student experiences, and do it in a really participatory way, working with clients, and excited to share what we've been learning and developing with all of you. We take a really results-oriented approach. Most of our experiences with institutions like you, of course, every institution is unique, but lots of large public research universities, and offering a range of services, helping people think about their space, their student services, their staffing, their operations, their organizational change. And we really try and take this results-oriented approach where we're applying best practices to create impact, like creating one-stop shops that increase completion and retention, or creating project spaces where students find their purpose in their career path, or creating active learning classrooms that reduce failure rates by half, or creating workspaces that give people back 10% of their day, or 10% of their day, or 10% of their week, depending on how you look at it. So that's a little bit about me and us, and excited to be with you all today. To get a sense of where you're at, here's the next poll. And you can kind of think about this as a little bit of a maturity model, a student experience maturity model, although maybe not in a linear way. So which of these is true on your campus and at your institution? Which, if there's one thing I've learned from the pandemic, you can't conflate campus and institution, by the way. So let me not do that again. But which of these holds true for you? Do you have a shared definition of student experience? Are you committed to it? Do you have this commitment improvement culture? Are you regularly assessing it? Are you comparing yourself to benchmarks? Do you know what the pain points and the highlights are? Are you already working on addressing them? Do you feel like your organizational structure reflects that commitment and those efforts? Let's take a look here. So, and this is a poll we used. A couple of years ago, we taught a course with EDUCAUSE on understanding and improving student experience, and these results seem pretty similar, with the same very interesting tidbit, which is more people are committed to student experience and are doing projects to improve it than have a definition of what they mean by student experience, which I always find fascinating, and maybe a place to start to create that that common ground. So given that, let's talk a little bit about student experience. And there are different definitions. We like to come at it from the discipline of experience design, where what you're really thinking about is how a person interacts with services, with technology, with staff, with people over time. Each of those interactions is a touch point, and your job is to understand and improve those touch points. And there are many different kinds of them. We have a free tool, the Student Experience Canvas, which is a kind of journey map that shows those different touch points. We tend to think of it in the 6 A's that are the student experience from applicant to alum. and then the different kind of functional areas of a university, the academic programs, the student services, the technology, the facilities, the community and culture. Of course, an experience is, it doesn't happen in those silos. So it cuts across these things, and you always have to think that way. But this is a useful way to break down something that's fairly amorphous and think about it. You're going to have these channels or these functions, you're going to have these phases, and then the intersection of the two is going to be touch points. And our job is to make those touch points better, more efficient, more effective experiences, and do that in a way that increases engagement and equity, because it doesn't happen by accident. It happens by design. When you're trying to understand those touch points, different ways of assessing the experience might include mining data, pulling things from your LMS, looking at ratings and reviews that students leave on things like niche.com, surveys that you're conducting, open forums that you're conducting, focus groups, interviews, having students do journaling exercises, doing photo essays, conducting observations. These are all great ways to assess the student experience, and you're usually mixing these. I think we find most commonly folks are mining the data they've already got, and they're conducting surveys to gather new data, and kind of dabbling in some of these others, and less so the more co-creative, kind of thicker descriptions of journaling and photo essays. But all these provide value. When we see pain points, they're often these kinds of issues, and I'm excited. I'm excited that you all are working on chatbots and applying AI, because we hear that as certainly many positives, but we also hear pain points about that. But more broadly, awareness. Are students aware of the services that are there to support them? Can they navigate those services? Is there the right balance of kind of centralization versus distribution? As students are studying online, has the university just created or recreated the classroom online and not the campus, the kind of full social and intellectual life, and how they're functioning as a community in terms of belonging, issues of equity, particular issues for or challenges for international students, familiarity with a new healthcare system, first gen students, not familiar, lack of familiarity with the hidden curriculum, um, students that are engaging mobile first, but systems and software and websites that aren't. And we also see a variety of common solutions, setting goals around the student experience. We're going to have X level of satisfaction. We're going to have Y level of completion. Redefining roles. We see campuses creating people with student experience in their title, deans of student experience, reorganizing departments to better reflect the student experience, break down some of those silos, defining the student experience. This is what we mean. We worked with one of the case studies we'll share, was Portland State, and the way they started to define the best student experience was the fewest barriers as possible. So it could be something as simple as that. Looking to other sectors and industries for inspiration. We've worked with universities that are looking to healthcare. What can they learn from other sectors? Redesigning processes, engaging looking for different ways for students to be more engaged, to be more exposed, co-locating different services in digital and physical hubs, service hubs and otherwise, and improving the connection, as students connect with folks like advisors or counselors or peer mentors. So that is a kind of a whirlwind tour of student experience to get folks oriented. And I think now where I want to take the conversation is how service design can help, because you can apply the mindset, the skill set, and the tools of service design to improve students' experiences. So what do we mean by service design? This is a great introduction, and this was what was sent out in the pre-read, and so I'll just give you a little bit of a primer, and we can certainly circle back if there are questions. But when we're looking at service design, what you're really trying to do is understand and improve the touch points of a service, right? The moments where a student interacts with the system, with a staff member, with technology, with each other, and make those interactions and make that service useful, usable, and desirable. And we think there are 5 great principles for that. Um, uh, People need to shape their own future, so you need a participatory process. We think it's really important to design outside in and inside out. So inside out, understanding the user needs, but outside in, also looking at the staff needs. You can't make something work for a user and not for a provider. Then you're kind of on borrowed time. You need to start with why, so that you have a shared you have that sort of shared philosophy, and you can find inspiration within higher ed, within your institution, but also externally, other institutions, other sectors. And that prototyping ideas is a great way to make the case. You change the conversation from I've got this unproven idea to we've got this thing that works, and now let's scale it up. And the ways that we're helping universities and colleges with service design usually fall in these 5 categories. We're training staff in service design, small bit of that happening today. We're helping them think about space as a service. Something they're offering that supports their students, and has to work for them, and it's bookable. It needs to be navigable. It needs to be accessible and functional and inspirational. We're helping them redesign their student services, reorganize teams so that they can better collaborate to deliver those services. And we often look at a service design project as a capacity building project. So we're trying to demonstrate new, more agile ways of working that our clients can adopt where that is appropriate. So I'll just briefly touch on a couple of the core tools, because I think you're going to go into this in greater detail. But personas are a great tool for service design, because they give you, we try and think of these not as stereotypes, but more like characters in a story you're trying to write about what what a great experience could be, or what the current experience is. And they allow you to synthesize what you know about someone's behaviors, motivations, expectations, actions. Less so about the fixed demographics. We're not big on that, and that's not really a best practice. It might help kind of round out a character, but it's more so what their motivations and behaviors are. And then a journey map is that story. It's someone's experience mapped out over time, and it can be diagnosing the current state. It can be envisioning a future state, envisioning a service that doesn't yet exist. Once you've created a persona and you've mapped out their journey, mapping out how you're going to deliver the service with the service blueprint is also a great tool, where you're thinking through, you're sort of organizing it according to the user actions, the orange here. Each of those is sort of a step, and the gray tells you that what the evidence of that is, the physical evidence, and then the blue is what are your front of house providers, staff, faculty, those that are interacting with the user directly, what are they doing? Then what's happening behind the scenes in terms of the folks that are supporting them, and then what sort of infrastructure systems are needed to make it all happen. And then prototyping, finally, is a really important tool, so that you can test out new ideas. And these generally range in sort of levels of detail or fidelity. you might start off with a storyboard where you're just trying to tell the story. This was a workshop we did at South by Southwest for a bunch of faculty, and they came up with stuff we could never have imagined, just Legos and foam blocks, and sort of imagining their ideal classroom. And this is an image from our best ever workshop participant who took a photo during the workshop, added these annotations about what was going on, and then tweeted it out before the end of the workshop. We were like blown away. But they can range from a lo-fi storyboard like this to a visual mock-up to a functional mock-up to a pop-up to a full-fledged pilot project. Okay, so a quick project, a quick student experience project we just finished for Metro State here in Minneapolis. We started off by assessing the experience to get a baseline. There are lots of surveys out there. We have one we call the Student Experience Snapshot that looks at the different dimensions of student experience, the platforms, the technology, the services, the programs, the culture, the community, the everything in between. And so this didn't want to reveal their data. So this is just a sample. This is actually the national student experience kind of pulse as of May of last year. We've got another one coming out from December. But kind of thinking about it in this way helps you set a baseline, and each of these areas has 5 or 6 sub areas that we used for Metro to pull out the highlights and the pain points, and then we coupled that that broad view with more deeper insights, and did things like asked students to share an image that showed how they felt, and that's always interesting. And then what was the sort of voiceover for the image? What did they say about? Was it about connecting with people? Was it feeling scared and out of place? Was it about being nervous and happy? Is it about focusing on today because tomorrow's kind of out of your control? From that, we identified different opportunities. So pulling out the findings from the interviews, from the focus groups, from the survey, and then generally putting them in these stages of the experience, the 6 A's from applicant to alum, and then color coding them by theme. This is on a mural board, and the things that started to bubble up was the drivers for different kinds of experiences had to do with how savvy students were with various systems, what their level of personal resources were, how effective the degree planning process was for them, if they had fewer or more responsibilities outside of school. That was a big driver for their success, and universal interest in extracurrics, but an inability for many to prioritize them based on competing needs. So then we started brainstorming different solutions, also on a mural board, and started putting those in buckets about career mentorship, about advising, about different support services, social life, communications. Then we actually went back out to the students and had them prioritize the things and effectively upvote and downvote, blue being positive and orange being negative, which sort of breaks my heart because orange is my favorite color. But this is how we settled on the top 5 ideas to then start prototyping. And they were about better integrating the career into the classroom. So looking at project-based learning happening in the classroom as ways to connect students with career opportunities, with internships, with other organizations, and a more robust career networking program, more robust degree planning, I should say, and more focus orientations for specific populations, and then when they reopen a new kind of cafe that's going to sort of intermix sort of student service delivery, promoting awareness and visibility, and maybe normalizing getting help a bit in a cafe setting. So, a quick take on that was like a 4-month sort of need finding, brainstorming, service design kind of problem. We also worked with Portland State to understand and improve their student experience, and that started off looking at the existing data that they had already collected, interviews from folks, as well as external data. They had looked at the Lumina, I think it's Lumina and Jeff Salingo differentiated university personas, and were found those useful. That the idea that driven by their motivations, some people might be aspiring academics, they might be trying to accelerate their career, they might be sort of exploring or wandering different topics, that kind of thing. So we had to work from that. Then we conducted a lot of interviews, in-home interviews, and workshops. On the left was one of the in-home interviews with somebody that I think was we used those personas to focus the interviews. So we wanted to interview a few people in each bucket. This was an academic wanderer, and he owned a coffee shop and was taking philosophy online part-time, and for its own sake. And he was kind of walking us through his schedule. And then from that, we identified different pain points, and the 3 that rose to the top. One was about degree planning. I had a lot of people that came in with a kind of a mosaic of different experiences. A lot of these were returning learners. So just know, am I a junior or am I a senior? How many credits do I need in what area? That was all pretty complicated for them to figure out. And then it was very hard for them to navigate among the different services in different places. And then the coordination among the services on the back end was also identified as something that could be improved. So then we started creating journey maps of the kind of the ideal solution. This one was about more integrative, interactive degree planning, kind of drag and drop, much more user-friendly, that you could do on an ongoing basis, with the idea that sort of becomes a touchstone. You keep coming back to your plan. And they ended up building this out with Barnes & Noble Education, after we had done some mock-ups, just to get at the kind of features and functions and a little bit about the look and feel. And then the other big thing was redesigning the student portal to bring all the students together. And this was the My PSU portal. They used Moto Labs, kind of out of the box. Well, I guess with a little bit of customization, but it's had a lot of use, and it's the platform they're the most satisfied with, and they actually got a decent retention bump, from about 70 to 74% first year retention bump. And finally, from talking with Jess and seeing your mural board and some of your thoughts, I know one of the things that you're thinking about is how do we connect the front and back of house. So a quick example of that with NYU, this was work effectively reimagining their computer labs and the associated services, many of which happen before or after you go there. So it's sort of the intersection of space and services, and observing the idea that the way students use labs is changing, and it's less about a place for individual concentration and checking email between classes, and more about collaborating and creating. And so that based on that, we identified the big shifts we were trying to make in the services, and what that would mean in the front of house and back of house. So if you imagine a traditional computer lab, rows and rows of desks, desktops on those desks, pretty fixed. This was kind of blowing that all up and saying, people are going to work together in teams on projects. They're going to go to a makerspace. They're going to go to the recording studio. They're going to check out a laptop. They're going to check out a mic. They're going to check out a light. So all of a sudden, we need to be more flexible. We need to be checking things out. Instead of our staff being student assistants that are sitting behind a desk and frankly probably getting some homework done, these are actually going to be students that are going to be roving the floor. They're going to be doing pop-up consults and clinics. Here's how to analyze something in R, or here's how to use Final Cut, or whatever it might be. So we identified those shifts, and then did the service blueprint to map out the different steps and connect the front and back of house. So that's a service blueprint is a great tool for that. In this case, this was a service blueprint for checking out a laptop, which was going to be a big service shift for them. They weren't doing any device checkout before, and so they had to think through what were the devices, what were the steps, what could you do from your dorm room before you got there, what would you do on site, how do you manage the queue, all these kinds of things. We prototype new services. In this case, this is an example of a walkthrough where basically we had a mock-up. I think we used something like a Google form to mock up how this would work, and then went through the checkout process with some people observing, and just use that to develop the steps, and then those steps go on the blueprint, and you go kind of back and forth working out the kinks. We also did a staff learning and development program. This was primarily student staff who, you remember, had to play a very different role. You're not sitting behind the desk, checking IDs. You're out on the floor helping people with their projects. So we had to help them do things like voice and tone and body language and referrals and service levels. And then you want to assess the performance. In this case, everything went quite well, which was great. Vast increases in satisfaction, increases in staff confidence from the training session before and after. My favorite stat from this project is when we looked at the log data, 59% decrease in checking email or social media, which meant, the old labs were kind of these places where you went for a few minutes and checked your email between classes and maybe printed out a handout. And the new space was all about, I'm going to work on this project. I'm going to make this video. I'm going to create this presentation. And so that was a really positive outcome. I think well, gosh, that really flew by. We've only got 3 minutes left, and I think, Jess, you wanted 5. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and first say thanks to everybody for listening. I hope this was helpful, and really appreciated the opportunity. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Elliot. Thanks, everyone.